Welcome again to Economic Forum, where today we are discussing the film and creative arts industry. The National Development Strategy also makes mention, and the government is actually promoting that sector. And we're going to hear how it is interacting with the actors in that space as we move forward. And we've invited Devs Guja, who is a theater and film producer. Devs, welcome to Economic Forum.
Thank you very much, John.
I think many people will be surprised that the arts is an industry. Maybe you can start from there, that why we call the arts an industry.
Very good question, John. So to put it into context, for example, when I got into the arts sector, way back in about 1986, which is the year when I formed the same institution that I lead today, it was seen as a hobby, primarily. You know, these are the years when there were a lot of arguments with parents about what we are trying to do. However,
and I'm sure you had a tough time then, or when you were already an adult, you were making your own decisions. But I bet if you were at home, you still had those problems.
I had huge problems.
Yeah.
Like I know that with my father, who is now late, I actually had to make an arrangement with him that when I turned 40, that I would study law, so that he could actually allow me to form the institution that I formed, that I still lead today, which I formed when I was 19 years old. So at that particular time, the theater and film were really seen just as nothing else but hobbies. But however, for Zimbabwe, particularly in the line of film, it so happened that we had one of the only laboratories from Cape to Cairo that would process what was called dailies, which was then Central Film Laboratories.
In Highlands.
In Highlands, which is where ZFM is today. But the terminology itself of our sector really starts changing and starts taking root in the context of Zimbabwe last year, when it suddenly became known as the creative and cultural industries. But this is also a terminology that we had developed at the African Union, where we thought this is going to be the next best thing. In other countries, they already refer to it as the orange economy. But I think for us, in our context, we believe that this is going to be your next big bubble. So yes, in contextually, it's now the creative and cultural industries.
Okay.
Yes.
Devs, why did it take so long to develop? Because I remember in the 70s, we had the popular, theater coming from South Africa, like Betha Egnos bringing Ipintombi, and Welcome Somi bringing Umabata, the Zulu Macbeth, and those were very popular here, and we had those big, houses, in Avondale, where they would perform, and even in Kambuzuma, although even Stodatol to some extent. We thought that would inspire us much earlier. Why did it take long?
I suppose it took so long in the sense that I think in between development aid happened. I think that's the crux of the matter. When you look at a person like me, my inspiration was Safiro Manzikatiri, Mukadota. Because I started seeing him when I was still in 1977, 1978, when we moved into Chitungwiza. And watching Mukadota on stage, I was like, this is it, I want to be like him. And then enter the period after independence, really you can say from 1982 to about 1997, 98. There were two key institutions there. The National Theatre Organization, which was predominantly for white theatre. And then for the black theatre, you had what was called Zimbabwe Association of Community Theatre, which was then led by the late Ngugi wa Miri. But ZACT specialized in this theatre for conscientization and education and that kind of thing. Enter some of us who are really in the middle of the ground, who saw theatre from a commercial angle, where we just thought, I just want to make money from this. I need to entertain, and so that at least I can make money.
You talked about appreciation, where when you started, you had problems with your father who wanted you to be a lawyer and so forth, until maybe later on you managed to convince him. What is the general appreciation, Devs, right now among parents? If I were to tell my mother or my father that after my A-levels I had so many points, 16 points, I'm going to study theatre arts, do you think that would be much welcome?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because most of these things now have been helped by what the universities are now offering. Remember, way back, you only had one university. But now that you have got your Great Zimbabwe University, MSU, NAST, and so forth, all of these now have got particular programs for that. And to make matters much more exciting, I think about 3-4 years ago, the Zimbabwean government, through the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education, then changed the curricula. So as you know, right now, even if you have got Mzukuru Masuku, if they go into ECD, they must learn something about the performing arts. They must learn something about this sector. So in a way, I think that finally we've managed to get it right in terms of making sure that the education really begins from the moment you start, which has always been a bedeviling point where you and I, we knew that, we could practice, but we could only practice when we're actually in our respective villages, whether Parutambwa GT or somebody else has died, and then we find ourselves dancing to something without realizing that this is actually creativity.
Maybe we should end this segment with you separating the two. What is theatre? What is film?
Right. Theatre, contrary to what people normally believe, they think that it's actually a foreign construct. But for some of us who have now taken time to really reflect on this, I'm trained as an actor doing something that was called method acting, but it took me a long time after I'd actually traveled to realize that actually that which we call method acting, I see it all the time, kama Mishakwedu, Mumabira, Mashikiro, Midzimu, right? When people actually get into character, So it's really about character. But also when you really reflect on it, if you go into Great Zimbabwe or if you go into Kami, all these places, they've always had theatre.
And very quickly, film.
Film is when we actually take in all these live things and then we document them. We actually put them on celluloid or we put them on something else, and we can actually keep on saying cut, and then we repeat exactly the same thing. Whereas theatre, there is no cut. When there's the stages there, we just perform.
I think we're going to cut right now and move on to the second segment. So join us in the second segment, where today we are discussing with Devs Guja, who is a theatre and film enthusiast, as well as a participant and expert in that matter. I want to add the word veteran, because you have been in it for a very long time. So join us in the second segment. Welcome to the second segment of Economic Forum, where today we are discussing the film industry. If you'd like to get in touch with us about the programs that we've broadcast, you can do so, and you can also watch them on our YouTube channel, which is Economic Forum Zimbabwe. And you can also get in touch with us about some of the topics that you would wish to be discussed on Economic Forum. We are on the numbers that are showing on your screen. And today we have a very interesting character, an actor, an organizer, and everything. And that's Devs Guja, who does theatre and film. Are there any names, Devs, that you can mention? Because we could be having parents here who are watching and say, but what is he talking about? Who do we know in that sector who has made money, who lives in such a, an area, who drives such a car, who makes a living, who has got children who are going to school? Are there such people that are coming out of the arts industry? Just to give examples like we do in football and so forth.
Yes, we've had.
Maybe starting with you.
Yeah, then I was going to come to that as well.
Okay.
You can always start with the late Wotan Paruta. Wotan Paruta was, at the time when he died, he was staying in Belvedere. Right? I stay in, my property is actually in Glenlawn. My kids, who are two of them anyway, were now old people, who are now 35 and 31.
You send them to school?
I send them to school, to university.
Through acting?
Through acting. In terms of the others that have actually done similar things, Nigel Munyati comes to mind. He had the Zimbabwe International Film Festival in Trust. So I think that there's quite a number of us. Joyce Jenje Makwenda.
Rumbika
Tedza. So there's quite a number of us. Anna John Jangu, who are now upcoming. All of these people, they actually specialize just in film. They've got property, and they also have sent in their kids to decent schools.
And you've had a number of groups going to act and even sing overseas.
Oh yes, without a doubt. Yes. When you look at even what we actually do ourselves as an institution, every 2 years, before COVID, would actually go in on tour for about 3-4 months into Europe. Not in ordinary spaces, because we're very specific. When we're doing performances, we perform only at national theaters of those other countries.
Like the Globe Theatre and
Like
so forth.
yes, the Globe Theatre, the National Theatre in Norway, you know. So in a
So you
in a
can
lot
go
of
to all
ways.
those places as an actor.
As an actor, you are flown in, and you get in on that stage,
And you're paid. You're not paid.
you are paid handsomely for that 1 hour when you're actually on that stage. But you know what I also realized, John, is that I used to think that only countries in Europe could give you that money until about 3 years ago, when I realized that you can actually get more money by touring on this continent. In countries such as Mali, who would have thought that you can actually go into Mali and perform in Mali?
And get money?
Yes, which is actually a French-speaking country. And you go in and you perform in your English, and you get money.
Okay.
You know?
No, how about the establishment in terms of places where your plays can be watched and so forth? I know you have your own institution, but I've been looking at some of the institutions where, film as well as some of the plays used to take place. Most of them are dilapidated. You look at Stoddart Hall, it's not in the best of shapes, although it's very durable building. You look at CJ, Cyril Jennings Hall, you look at Mkoba Hall, you look at McDonald, in Bulawayo. We don't seem to be valuing, all these places and looking after them. Are some of the places where I was talking earlier on about Ipintombi of Betha Agnos and Umabata of Macbeth, which we used to watch in the 70s. They've been turned into restaurants and other places. What are we doing in that area so that people can go to these places over and above yours, which is right in the middle, of a park?
Yeah. We have let ourselves down. In fact, nowadays I tend to use the word the collective we.
You're part of it.
We are all part of it, John.
Yes.
We really are.
Before you continue, even Amakose Theatre in Bulawayo,
Yeah.
something that Conte and company had put up,
Yeah.
is now a pale shadow of itself. I passed through there most recently. I don't know whether they are still acting there, but it produced quite a number of actors, some of who are even in other countries doing very well. I just wanted to add that as well.
Yeah, so this is very interesting. At that time, I think most of our cities were coming up, immediately during the Rhodesian times. So it quite a number of these halls that were actually constructed that would speak through to most of our needs. Like when I said I saw Dara Safiro Manzegatere, I saw him in a hall in Chitungwisa.
Seke Kenneth Hall.
Seke Kenneth Hall. And I know that my parents sometimes would actually drag us and go to Kambuzuma Garden Party, where they would actually we're all sitting there watching jazz, enjoying jazz. Whilst my father's having his beer, and us as kids having our fun.
Those places are now history. Mr. Chipudla's garden party you're talking about long closed a long time ago, and even the theaters on the edge of Kambuzuma are no longer there.
I think the education went wrong. Really, I honestly think that the education went wrong in the sense that from 1980 to about 3-4 years ago, we thought everyone else wanted to be a doctor, or wanted to be a banker, or wanted to be a nurse, or wanted to be a teacher, and so forth. And now when people realize that, no, you can actually be an artist.
Dave Sguja, who is a theatre and film artist, who is talking about that industry, the theatre and film industry, we're saying it's actually thriving, and we can even make it better, and you can actually make a living out of it. He has given us several examples to show that it's an industry that can actually sustain families. So if you'd like to get in touch with us, the numbers are flashing on your screen. And also don't forget that you can watch some of the past episodes on Economic Forum Zimbabwe. Join us in the third and final segment. Welcome to the third and final segment of Economic Forum, where today we are discussing the theatre and film industry in Zimbabwe. Devs Guja here has just confirmed that you can actually make a living out of it, and has given us some very attractive examples. You know, you actually wanted to mention some more people who are even in Hollywood and other places, and others are producers. I know the Campbell brothers are producing big musicians elsewhere. Tell us more.
You know, for people like Chipo Chung, Fei Chung's daughter, right? Yavodana Gurira, Yavodana Arnold Tonga Chirisa. All these are turning out to be big names that actually started off here in Zimbabwe and then went out there. We Namsamati, we claim him as our own because at least he started off here, even though now Tanzania claims it as its own. You know, so the success stories are there.
Tell us more.
If it was not successful, John, I got into theatre when I was 19. I formed Rooftop when I was 19. I'm now 54. The only thing that I've known in my life is theatre and film. If it was not rewarding, surely I would have moved on to other things.
Yeah. Devs, there are many groups. We are mentioning them here in order to inspire the youngsters, in order to inspire the parents, because at times when children want to choose some of these disciplines, they are discouraged, and yet they will be showing some signs of success. Maybe you just want to add some, IASA and who?
Yes, you have heard IASA, which has been globetrotting for a very, very long time. You have got CIA Arts, you have got Mokumba in terms of actually music, you know. There are quite a number that go in. In fact, actually, when you look at the statistics of how many arts institutions before COVID would actually travel globally in the European summer or American when there's good weather, we actually did the stats at one time, and then we realized that in terms of actual personnel, we are nothing less than 450 that will actually get on the different flights just to be performing around that particular time.
You mentioned something which is worth discussing, COVID. How did you survive, Devs? You know, when there were lockdowns and so forth. Did you regret being in the arts?
Not really. I think that on our part, we found it challenging. It gave us time to move away from our comfort zone. Did it have a huge economic impact? Yes, it did. It takes us back to that conversation when we actually said now we are now in industry. The only thing that's actually been missing was obviously, you know, the other industries such as your tourism, manufacturing, and infrastructural development had they were being cushioned by Minister Mtuli Ngube, you know, so that they could actually restart. But for the creative and cultural industries, it wasn't the case.
Well, probably it was difficult to cushion actors.
Yes, but I'm happy now in this new budget that he actually announced, I think last Thursday. Now suddenly we see there's a bit of money. I think that they've begun to take us into account. It's not as much as we wanted, but I'm sure it's a good starting point.
But you're also in the strategy, the government strategy, the NDS one.
Yes.
Yeah. So yes, there's recognition. But just tell us what you bring to the national fiscus.
A lot. Imagine, I want Zimbabweans just to imagine a day, you know, not even 2 days, just 24 hours without music, without film, without theater, without literature, without poetry, without visual arts. What would your day be like? And then if you remove all those from your life, then you actually begin to understand exactly what it is that we actually bring in. In terms of the actual numbers, I'm aware that there's a new study that's being done to try to come up with these numbers, you know. So
which numbers are these?
In terms of the actual figures.
What you are bringing into
what we're bringing, yes, what we're bringing in. But I would like to say, John, you know, this is the thing about us developing countries. In developing countries, we tend to react a bit slower to our creative and cultural industries. But when Europe reacts, because they are reacting knowing exactly what they're doing. For example, we've all been taking our content. I almost loved when you said you're taking your content and you put it on YouTube. That Economic Forum is on YouTube.
Yes.
So ultimately, you're actually giving in content for free to YouTube, which if you don't have a registration certificate right now for your tax, they started taxing quite a number of artists that are putting in their content there. You know. So when you actually ask yourself as an artist in Zimbabwe, if you get taxed, how many of us have got tax certificates? You know. But at the end of the day, my point is, we must look at avenues where we can actually take in all this content and put it on one platform that gives us our own money, instead of us waiting for Deezer or YouTube or any of those platforms when they've subtracted the big chunk of their money so that they can give us the change. And I think it's a problem of the continent that we really must start looking into in terms of how do we monetize our own content to our own benefit.
How does commerce and industry support the theatre and film industry? Are you being supported satisfactorily?
Hardly. But we started re-engaging again, so we never lose hope. We went through a phase where the majority of our CEOs or our decision makers within the corporate sector got fascinated with the wrong things. They got fascinated with golf, they got fascinated with horses and other things. And then they forgot that there's this other baby, which is the creative and cultural industries. But also in a way, because of how we're brought up, you and I can go to our villages and then we can play mchongoyo. We can participate when there's a ritual. So sometimes our mind to start thinking that actually mchongoyo is an art form that needs to be monetized sometimes becomes very difficult. But I think now there's a bit of inroad that's beginning to happen. But my clear call to financial institutions and so forth is come and support us now. Support us now before big companies, big corporates that are actually sitting in Europe or America start coming in to support us.
In a few seconds, the future of the film and arts industry in Zimbabwe, is it bright, Devs?
It's looking very good. It is looking very good, I can assure you. I'm aware of the amount of content that's being produced out there, such as yourselves. You are now producing this. So, who can dispute it?
So, Devs, what is the future of the arts industry with regards to entrepreneurship, so that those who perform are not just given money for a drink like we used to see in the 60s and 70s, where when Cheka Mwenje comes in from Chipinge all the way with his family, just throw coins and it ends there. Yeah.
I think that the sector itself has started doing segmentation. Segmentation in terms of the various roles and responsibilities. So if you're a producer or actually a production manager or if you're actually anything of those roles. So because bear in mind that our sector's biggest challenge has been there is no standardized fees. There is no unions, which I'm aware that now people like John Jangu have now started working on making sure that there is actually a union for film that's beginning to come up. But I think that is the starting point where we actually get ourselves organized so that at least we can come up with these standard fees where you say, if you're in Group C, you know what you're supposed to get. If you're Group B, you know exactly what you're supposed to get. If you're Group A, you know what you're supposed to get. I say this wholeheartedly because at least I know for certain that there is a number of very young people who are now interested in nothing else other than the creative and cultural industries.
Well, thank you very much. That's Devs Guja, who is a theatre and film artist, and also is a veteran in that area in terms of organizing and leading. Devs, thanks very much for coming to Economic Forum.
Thank you very much, John.
If you would like to join us in some of the episodes, you can do so on our YouTube channel, which is Economic Forum Zimbabwe. And also, if you'd like to share some interesting topics with us or give feedback on some of the programs that we've given you, you can do so on the numbers that are showing on your screen. So until next time, this is John Maso.